Yup, we're back at it again. And how about we roll that intro?
Power I seek, and if it ain't about the money, then my nigga don't speak. I be in the lab getting immersed in these verses. I'm writing the light brighter than the white in the mime, and I'm working hard like I need an A on assignment. They copy tape like I'm Simon. No walkie-talkie, I'm stat. Hitting it from the back. Walk around with the strap. Concealed cause I can, it's a city law. Hold up, bitch, you can't, man, I pity y'all. How y'all on the streets where these niggas gonna really rob? I up the heat, aim at his meat, chili dog. Really.
Okay, now, last time that we left off, Izuku had just killed the guy that was going. So I'm pretty sure last time he was gonna rob the girl. So after doing this, Izuku leaves his, I'm gonna call this state Zeus's blessing. So he leaves that state, and he's at this point freaking out. You know, he doesn't know what to do because he just killed someone, and he doesn't know if he should hide the body. But technically, he never really touched the guy, at least not with his fingerprints. So he decides to run away. After a while of contemplating inside of his mind, he then remembers that heroes sometimes have to kill. Even though they don't try to do it, it happens sometimes because they'd rather save the public, like save a bunch of people, than risk one life, you know? So if they could, they would go ahead and do that. So Izuku is not at this point calling himself a murderer, but he is still freaking out. Now, Izuku goes to school, and he sees Bakugo. Now, today Bakugo seems like he's not going to bother Izuku. So, Izuku's having a good day, all in all. Nothing's going wrong, until Bakugo comes up from behind him and blows up his book. Now, Izuku stands up, and Bakugo looks at Izuku with a death stare. Izuku doesn't know why he got up, because normally he would just let it slide. Like, he would be pulling the Berlizzi, like, I'm gonna have to let it slide. I'm gonna have to let it slide. Let me stop. But he usually lets Bakugo slide with what he be doing. So Bakugo then grabs Izuku by the shirt and he says, "What are you gonna do? You're nothing but a quirkless nerd. You can't even fight." Now, Bakugo then throws Izuku back onto the chair. And he goes to a seat because he sees the teacher coming inside of the room. Now, skip a few hours later. Now, at this point, it's the end of school, and Izuku decides to walk up to the roof. Now, when he does walk up to the roof, Bakugo sees him, making his way up there. So Bakugo lurks him, low-key. He low-key on him. So once Izuku's actually up there, Izuku's chilling until all of a sudden he's yanked from behind, and then he turns around to see Bakugo. Now instantly he knows what this means. So he closes his eyes as Bakugo starts to stomp him, and his friends start to join in, and they start to stomp and beat him. Now, basically, before Bakugo leaves, and I'm gonna say this is gonna follow canon, but I'm gonna switch a few things up. So Bakugo says, you should go ahead and take a swan dive off of here. Maybe you'll reincarnate and have a quirk in your next life. And after he says this, he then leaves Izuku on the ground, broken and hurt. Now, Izuku, after a while, wakes up, and he's still on the roof. Let's say it's a few hours later, and he's walking home. At this point, the sun's about to set, so he's freaking out, hurrying up and trying to run He's basically hurrying up and trying to run over to his mom's house. Well, his house, technically. And on the way, he doesn't notice the sludge villain. Now, as he's running, the sludge villain then grabs onto him. And Izuku then instantly starts to freak out. Because this could either be one of two things. This could be Bakugo, or this could be a villain. Now, at this point, he's hoping it's neither, but of course it has to be one. And it's the sludge villain. Now, at this point, the sludge villain says, "Kid, I'm gonna need to hide out inside of your body. You're most likely gonna die, so don't struggle too much, and this will be quick." Even though it's technically suffocation. But let's not get into that. Now, the sludge villain then starts to go through Izuku's mouth, eyes, and nose. Well, not eyes. His mouth, nose, and ears. Now, at this point, Izuku's over here just suffocating. Like he's just trying to pull the sludge villain apart, but every single time he does, the sludge gets replaced by even more sludge, and it's kind of like you know a revolving cycle. So after a while, Izuku starts to get weak, and he starts to pass out. Until, from the distance, he hears, "I am here." And as he hears that, he hears Texas Smash. And as he hears this, he then, the sludge villain then gets pushed off of him by the sheer force of the smash. And he then starts gasping for air. Even though inside the anime it didn't make sense how, sludge was going into his body and he was suffocating. But somehow the sludge villain, like the sludge wasn't in his body and the sludge just got thrown out. Like apparently when wind goes forward, it's not like it just all of a sudden just stops. It wouldn't just get pushed outwards if wind was going forward. But we're not going to talk about that. Now, at this point, Izuku's coughing and gasping for air. And the sludge villain's basically pushed everywhere, and his main consciousness is inside of a tiny form of sludge. And All Might gets a bottle from the ground and a cap, and he puts the sludge villain inside of there. Barely fitting, but still there. Now, All Might then checks on Izuku and says, "Are you okay, young?" And then Izuku says, "Izuku Midoriya." Now, he says, "Are you okay, young Midoriya?" And, Izuku says, "Yeah, like, there's nothing physically wrong with his body except he's a little bit tired." Now, All Might says, "Okay, I'm gonna have to get this sludge villain to the police station." But as he jumps off, Izuku grabs onto All Might, All Might not noticing that the bottle fell out of his pocket because he's too focused on trying to land and, not drop Izuku. Kill him, because that would be bad. Anyways, he then lands on top of a building, and Izuku asks All Might, can he become a hero if he doesn't have a quirk? Now, All Might, being completely honest and about to fall out of his form, tries to explain inside of his best All Might voice. But before he can, he pops back into his skinny state. Now, Izuku's shocked by this, and All Might then explains everything that happened with All For One. And Izuku's just like, okay. That makes sense. But he asks his question again. Can I become a hero without a quirk? And he still says this since he doesn't know if that power was temporary or permanent. Since technically he is still a nerd, he would think about his power being temporary or permanent. So he still asks this question like inside of canon. Now, All Might says, Young Midoriya, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. You could become a police officer or a medic or a doctor, but to be honest, inside of this world, you can you're most likely not gonna become a hero if you do not have a quirk. Now, this kind of breaks Izuku's spirit, and All Might puffs back up his chest and jumps away. Now, Izuku starts to walk back home, and as he does, he hears an explosion. Now, as he hears this explosion, he then runs towards it, and he sees a bunch of heroes and a bunch of people gathered inside of an area. Now, as he sees this, or saw this, I should stop saying sees is not proper grammar. Anyway, as he is looking at this, he notices the person inside of there is Bakugo, and Bakugo is basically being choked by the sludge villain. Now, everybody's wondering where is All Might, even though there's heroes here. These heroes aren't equipped to handle a villain like the sludge villain. They're equipped to handle normal villains like with fire or ice quirks, maybe even poison. And All Might is in the area, but he cannot go back inside of his state since he had that conversation with Izuku, and he's run up his time limit. Dang. Now, anyway, Izuku runs past the heroes after seeing All Might's not arriving, and basically Bakugo's still suffocating. Now, a villain, I don't know why I keep saying a villain. A hero tries to stop him, but he runs straight past him, which I don't get from the canon, but let's not talk about that. And he basically tries to dig Bakugo out. Now, as he's trying to do that, he's getting the sludge away from Bakugo's mouth, and Bakugo gets a gasp of air and says, "No, I don't want to sound cringy," but he says, "Here, oh shit, here I go again." He says, "Deku, I don't need your help. Get the fuck away." I'm gonna add a lot more cuss words inside of this. That's what I'm gonna do now. Basically, as he says this, he then starts causing explosions, but the explosions are still not doing anything. My fault. And as he's doing this, the sludge villain then notices with what Izuku's doing, and he says, "Hey, you're the annoying brat from earlier that almost got me captured." Now, as he says this, he then spits out Bakugo. Well, he doesn't spit out Bakugo. He grabs Izuku also. Now, at this point, Izuku and Bakugo are suffocating. But at this point, Bakugo has gotten enough air to last a lot longer than Izuku, since Izuku, first off, cannot create explosions and cannot get tiny pockets of air here and there. So he's basically suffocating faster than Bakugo. Now, as all of this happens, Izuku then starts to lose consciousness from suffocating so long. And the sludge villain's like, "Yes. Yeah, kid, just give up and it'll all end soon." Now, inside of Izuku's head at this point, he's like, maybe if I give up, I'll be able to get a quirk in another life. Now, as he says this, he closes his eyes, and his eyes open back up. Now, as they open back up, a lightning bolt then strikes the bridge, breaking apart the entire bridge. Now, at this point, the bridge was closed. I'm going to say that so that he doesn't murder a bunch of people, but the bridge was closed because of the villain right underneath it. So, nobody was there. Yeah, but sorry if you can hear all the noise I'm making by moving. As I was saying, yeah, but the bridge is broken apart by a rainbow looking lightning bolt. And as this happens, the Sledgehammer is thrown back, and Bakugo is thrown back. Now, the dust then clears, and you see Izuku with glowing white eyes and lightning coming off of him. Now, he then walks towards the Sledgehammer, and the Sledgehammer then starts to try and absorb him. But as it does, every single time it does, try this, it starts to melt apart every single time it gets close. Like, it's tiny little sparks of lightning, but the tiny little sparks of lightning have a lot of heat behind them. You know, hotter than normal bolts of lightning. So at this point, it's just melting every single time it touches the Sledgehammer. Now, he puts his two fingers up again, and then he says, "Be gone," with the thunderclap. And yes, I just made a Sasuke reference. And then lightning shoots out of his fingers. And this lightning is colored green. Well, no, I'm going to say orange. I'm going to say whenever he's in this state, whenever he uses that move, his lightning is orange. But if he uses any other move, it can be any other color. Now, basically, the Sledgehammer gets hit by the lightning bolt, and half of its body is disintegrated, but the Sledgehammer is basically a tiny blob of sludge. Since before, it was only big enough to get across a body, but it was still the body was still healing because of the initial damage All Might did to it. Now, at this point, All Might jumps down, and everybody can think, even Izuku inside of this state, is, how late do you have to be for a whole bridge to collapse? And you still get here late. I mean, like, that's way more than fashionably, dang it, I cannot talk, fashionably late. At this point, that's just deadly late. Like, two kids almost died, as a matter of fact. Now, as All Might gets here, he gets his bottle off the floor again, and he puts the Sledgehammer inside of there. Now, basically, at this point, Izuku passes out, and All Might comes up to him and says, inside of a low tone, "You did good, kid." Now, as he says this, he then puts Izuku on his back, and before jumping off, he asks Bakugo, is he okay, and does anything hurt? Now, Bakugo being Bakugo, he says, yeah, whatever. So all he can think is, that was kind of rude. And he jumped. Sorry, the clip ended before I could say what I wanted to say. Okay, now as I was saying, All Might jumps off. And this is where I'm going to end it for today. If you guys enjoyed, then, you enjoyed. You can subscribe if you want to. I'd appreciate it. And have a good day. Enjoy this outro, I guess.
Wanna ask his bitch ass that, but that nigga dead for real. Been a nigga block the windows down, but I like jumping out. You clap first, I'm still coming, bitch, we just gon' spark it out. Run the opposition down and knock his fucking tonsils out. Lil' bro smooth his ass, that nigga dead, that's what that chopper about. We ain't ducking shit, bitch, what it is, let's bring them choppers out. Pull up to his crib, that's where he live, oh yeah, we popping out. Ain't no questions asked, bitch, I'm a blast, they know I'm rocking out. When this chopper flash, boy, that's your ass, ain't shit to talk about.